Okay. Mr. President.
Senator from Kentucky.
There have been many who have said, including Admiral Mullen, among others, that the greatest threat to our national security is our debt. We have a $20 trillion debt. This year, the debt for 1 year will be about $700 billion. We borrow $1 million a minute. What we have before us is a bill that will exceed our spending caps. We will be told that this is an emergency and we must do it. And yet I think that true compassion comes from helping those, but also making sure that we don't add to our debt. I think that the truly compassionate person helps their neighbor by giving part of their surplus to their neighbor, but not going to the bank and borrowing money to give it to their neighbor. We're $700 billion short in the budget, and we're simply going to print more money and send it to Puerto Rico and Texas and Florida. What I've asked is, if you want to help people, why don't we set our priorities? Why don't we take money from other areas of the budget where it's not needed? What I've proposed is that we cut 1% or a little bit less than that across the board. I think there's not a department of government that couldn't deal with 1% less, and we would take that money and we could spend it on the emergency in Puerto Rico and Texas. But I think if we think somehow that it's compassionate to go ahead and just borrow more money and continue doing this, I think we're fooling ourselves. I think our country becomes weaker each day we add to the debt, and I think it's time we become honest with ourselves. If you look at whose fault this is, there's enough blame to go around, frankly. The debt doubled under George W. Bush from $5 trillion to $10 trillion. The debt then doubled again from $10 to $20 trillion under President Obama. We are on course to add, some estimate, another 10, 15 billion over the next 8 years. This is a real problem for our country. And so I think as we look towards helping those who suffered from the hurricane, we should look towards taking it away from less pressing priorities. There's also $16 billion in here for the flood program that continues to pay people to build in flood zones. We do it year after year after year, and we continue to rebuild in flood zones, and then the taxpayers left on the hook. So we're wiping out $16 billion in debt for the flood program, and we're also then spending money that we don't have. So what I would like to do at this point is to raise a point of order that has to do with us exceeding the spending caps. I think if we're going to be honest with ourselves, we're in the midst of talking about a large tax cut, which I favor. But how can we be the party or the people who cut taxes at the same time we continue to borrow more? So what I'm asking through this budget point of order is that we actually adhere to our rules, not exceed our spending caps, and try to slow down the accumulation of debt. With that, Mr. President, I raise Section 314E, point of order, pursuant to the Congressional Budget Act of 1974, against Sections 304, 306, 308, and 309 of the Additional Supplemental Appropriations for Disaster Relief Requirements Act of 2017.